apologies for that. All right, I'm going to quickly change my settings so that I'm mirroring instead of using a secondary display. Okay. All right, we'll see how this goes. Thank you for coming. My name is Greg. This is the very first time I've presented at anything really since, I don't know, 6th grade, school. So afterwards, feel free to give me any feedback, what you liked, what didn't work. It'll be cut a little bit short because I started a little bit late. If you want to follow along, these slides are at the address there at the bottom.
Can we just hide the banner on there?
Yes. Great. Okay. Then let me let's see. All right, well, it probably won't in a minute once that updates. Yeah. All right, good. Let me get rid of that. All right. So very quickly, this is a nice shortened version of my goals list. We're gonna start going through this process of looking at how you can tweak and customize WordPress. And we're gonna see just how far we can get with the time we have. Basically, I think that WordPress is a really excellent way to dip your toe or start wading into PHP, object-oriented programming. If you come into WordPress just knowing some HTML and CSS, you can pretty much open up the files and figure out kind of how it works. It'll motivate you to learn the things you need to learn in order to change whatever it is you want to change. So that means you'll learn some PHP, you'll learn some JavaScript. And in order to do that, though, it really helps to know what the heck to look for. Because if you are like me and you work on your own, you can't really just call people up. You haven't taken classes that have taught you all of these things step by step. So introduction to some of the terminology that's used, and just sort of an overview of some of the files. We'll take a peek into individual files, and we'll look at setting up look at how WordPress loads a page when you type in a URL. We'll talk about child themes a little bit. We'll talk about the absolute basics of a plugin, and we'll talk about some other options. This is sort of the how far can we get. Well, there's options with sidebars, there's options with custom post types, there's options with customizing the admin interface, and we'll show you how you can go about that. The first thing that I want to do, though, is ask if anyone has any burning questions, because I know if I am new to a topic or just getting into it, I might have a thing on my mind that I'm hoping this person will answer some point in their talk. And if I don't get it answered up front, it's going to interrupt me, my ability to concentrate for the rest of it. So does anyone have anything that they are hoping to get out of this presentation? Or specifically, do you have any questions already? No? Awesome. All right. So how many people here run WordPress sites all the time. Like you're in charge of managing your own website or building them for other people. It's anything where you're using WordPress pretty much every day. Okay, and of those people, how many of you code in WordPress, mess around with the themes, mess around with, how many people have built their own plugin? All right, how many people have built their own theme? I would guess that would be first before doing a plugin, actually. So you probably know a lot of what I'm going to talk about already. How many of you are just typical WordPress users, like you manage a site that uses WordPress and you're interested in learning, how you can do a little bit more with it? Okay, well, this first section is going to be for you folks. Screen sizes are going to be a little odd, but oh yeah, this is fun. Of course, it collapses the sidebar because I'm on this tiny little window. Things you learn once you start presenting and get your windows collapsed. So, if you have a premium theme that you bought off of Theme Forest or something else like that, a lot of them have these customization panels. And a section of that will often be, somewhere in there, they'll have a section for custom CSS or custom JavaScript. And that's great. You can just throw in some code into those boxes, hit save, and it'll be on your site. And I highly recommend using those before doing anything else. There are various reasons for that, but the most simple is just if somebody else has to take over your site, they can look for it there and they'll be able to find it. The next step is to use a plugin that would let you add some custom CSS. And the plugin simple custom CSS is the name of the plugin. It just adds a section under appearance that lets you type in, if your theme doesn't have that handy custom CSS box, it gives you one right here. And those are the ones that might be built into the theme that you bought. Built into WordPress is, of course, the customizer. And that's under Appearance, Customize. And by the way, prior to this, I just installed Divi, which is a popular all-in-one theme. Now the customizer is fairly new to WordPress, and some people love it, some people hate it. You get this interface. Hopefully you're familiar with it at this point because this is where everything is going in terms of customization for WordPress. Eventually, even things like managing your menus, that is getting taken out. Eventually it will be taken out of the separate menu item for editing your menus will be removed, and that will be done through the customizer. Again, some people are kind of upset about that change. So there are some sections, sometimes the theme you buy will not have a separate options panel. In fact, if you download a theme from WordPress.org, the theme repository there, the new guidelines say that everything must be done through the customizer. So they don't want people to have a separate options page in the admin anymore. Now, in terms of what's available to you as a programmer, you can add sections to this. We're not going to cover that because it's really just too much. I think that's maybe level 3, and we're just going to focus on level 1. So there's the plugin I mentioned. So as you're stepping into customization and custom WordPress development, we'll get an idea of what happens when you press enter or click on a link type in a URL. First thing is WordPress core loads, and that, for the purposes of this presentation, is just a black box of magic. We aren't going to look at what goes into it. All we care about is what comes out. It's a beautiful page, lots of functions and options that we can hook into. If you want to look at how WordPress works, you can go, let's see, did I link to it in this slide? I did not. Perhaps at some point I will add the link, but you can go to wordpress.org, and actually if you Google make WordPress core, you'll get this page. And you can just browse. You can browse through WordPress files and get a pretty decent interface for looking at how it works. It has nice color coding and everything. And of course, you can open up a WordPress if you've installed it and look at it in your text editor. So you can look at core files and find out how they work. And it's great to start doing that when you see a function name and you're like, how exactly does that work? How did this gallery get output on my page? If you download WordPress to your local computer, just open it up in well, if you're using a Mac, I don't know how this works on Windows, but on a Mac, you can open up a folder, and in the search box, whatever you type in, it will limit that search to what's in that folder. So if you have a pretty good idea of where the thing you're looking for exists inside of WordPress, like, oh, I saw that it said this thing was in, WP includes. Okay, well, you can go into that folder, do your search, and you will find hopefully the actual function name itself rather than the 5,000 references to it in other files. So WordPress core does its magic, and then it will go through and run it'll open up your plugins. And when WordPress activates your plugins, it goes into whatever that plugin, it goes through your plugins folder and it looks at every file. Oops, I was not in the right. It looks through every file. So for example, Akismet. WordPress actually searches every file for specific information. In the case of Akismet, what it's looking for is this plugin name. And so any file, it's important to have a file in your plugin folder that has this name. We're going to get back to this just a little bit later with a custom plugin if we get to it. So that's all it's looking for. Everything else that's in that folder, you have to tie in some way. But as long as it has that, it will run that plugin code. And that might depend, when you want to customize somebody else's plugin, they will hopefully give you options or ways you can do that with hooks. WordPress itself has lots of hooks, and this is how we're going to look at, this is how we're going to start looking at customization. Is we're going to take a basic WordPress action hook and dissect that. I'm just trying to decide if I want to go through. Do you want to look at action hooks now or finish with this basic overview and then go into it more? Up to you. Great. Loads your plugins, then it loads your active theme, whatever you have chosen in the interface. Now, there are child themes, and this is the first thing you will want to do if you are customizing, if you want to customize the overall look of your WordPress site. is to create a child theme. We'll go through that in just a minute, but it's important to realize that the theme that you have chosen, which will be your child theme, gets loaded before the parent theme. And that comes into play, and that's important when you start looking at the way that functions are named in your file. It's also important to realize that depending on how you set up your child theme, you may end up, you want your CSS files to load after your parent theme CSS files. So there's a little bit more you'll have to do to make sure that those get ordered that way, so that you are overriding your parent theme rather than your parent theme overriding you in the CSS. After the parent theme loads, and that's basically when WordPress is loading themes. I'm going to go back here again. We have WP content, themes, and most of these are kind of scary looking. They have lots of files. The child theme is very simple because I right now just have 2 files in it. And this is all that's necessary or required in WordPress to be a theme. Because when WordPress loads a theme, it is just looking for a file called functions.php in your theme folder. That's it. It doesn't care about any of the others. You have to have a style.css, but that's really just to get the name of your theme even. So functions.php runs, and then WordPress will determine what kind, let's see, I'm going to switch back again. In the case of something like 2015, now we have archive, we have the header, we have page, we have search. WordPress is going to use an algorithm to determine what kind of request you made, and it's going to load the appropriate file from the theme directory. So if the request was for what's called in WordPress a page, as opposed to a specific page with a capital P, it will load the page.php file. And in terms of when customizing, now if we wanted to customize the way that 2015, if we want to customize what 2015 does with a generic page, what I usually do is, because I have my child theme set up, I would just copy and paste this into my child theme. We can do that in a moment. Template hierarchy is a little overwhelming at first. The part that's right before this left-hand side is all of the internal logic that WordPress does for database queries. It's like, oh, what was the URL that was requested? yourdomain.com/nothing, just the home page. Okay, great. That means that WordPress knows that it is a single page, and I'm looking for front page on this. There we go. It knows it's your front page, so it is going to look for frontpage.php. If it was some subpage, okay, it knows it's a single page. And then it goes through this whole bit of logic. And there are different ways you can name the files in your theme directory to get it to generate something different based on what kinds of information are being displayed. It's important to have these links so that you can understand this logic, but for the purposes of getting started, the best thing to do is just copy and paste the pages, the templates, the files that exist in your parent theme. I I throw in this little bit for pre-get posts, because those of you who have been doing this for a while, it took me a while to figure out the correct place and time to modify what is being, what data WordPress pulls from the database to show on your page. So this is the one, and it's pre-get posts, and it's super important. If you want to, this is step 3 for, or level 3 for WordPress customization, but it's worth throwing in here for those of you who need it. If you want to do something like exclude everything that's from a particular category, that's where you would hook into it. Sorry for those of you who have not been introduced to hooks yet, but for those of you who have, that's very important. Oops. What happened to my other slides? Oh no. All right, well, that's not upload, no, that's localhost. Weird, all right. I don't really need the additional slides because I have other notes. Separately, I must have had a typo in my HTML file or something, which I will figure out later. So yes, let's take a look at, so let me just, because my slide isn't there, I'm going to look at this. Yeah. All right, so creating a child theme. All you have to do to create a child theme is create a new folder in the themes folder inside WP content. How many people have not worked with WordPress over FTP? Great. How many, oh, have not? Yeah. Well, or how many, but have you worked on FTP and editing files and for other things? Yeah. Okay. So you can create, the name of the folder doesn't matter. It's whatever you need to call it. Inside that, you need style.css, and there are people who do entire presentations on child theming. So I'm not going to go into it very, very deeply. There are lots of tutorials online for how to do this if you need step-by-step examples. Basically, child theme needs a CSS file that looks like this. It doesn't even have to have any CSS in it besides that. Oftentimes, you will see at import and then a path to the parent theme's CSS file. That's one way of doing it. The preferred way is to use something we will talk about now. The other file you need in your child theme, oh yeah, so your child theme just says the name of it, and very important, it includes template, and you can look up this information too. If you just do child theme boilerplate, you'll get something that looks like this. Just has the name of the folder name of the template that's your parent theme. So inside your functions.php file, if you have never coded in PHP before, the basics are it's HTML with some extra special tags that let you program. It starts like this. Any part that is going to be PHP is just the open bracket $PHP. This file, as it exists right now, is perfectly valid PHP, and it's a great functions file. It has absolutely nothing in it. Makes it very simple. WordPress doesn't have to do anything extra. Your site will be super fast. If you want it to load some CSS files, you need to create a function that will be doing the loading of those CSS files. What I'm actually going to do is step back to, I'm going to go look at 2015, the functions file in 2015. This is a great way to start learning how to do more advanced customization in WordPress, is to look at somebody else who has done it the right way, which every theme that automatic releases is certainly bound to do. So you take a look at any of the 20 whatever themes and figure out how they did it. In this case, I'm wondering, gee, how did they load their CSS file? Well, I know that it's called style.css. But oh look, I get a reference that says that's in this add editor style. That doesn't sound right to me. Okay, it must be something else. We will not be talking about add editor style because we will run out of time, but you can customize the admin interface to have to show the same styles on the back end that people see on the front end. And that's how you do it with add editor style. So tuck that one away in your reference. So I didn't find what I was looking for. Okay, let's go to Google and ask Google, WordPress load style sheet. Function reference. WP and Q style. That sounds right. Let's click it and find out what it is. A safe way to add and queue a style sheet file to the WordPress generated page. Yes, this is what I wanted. Great. So this is the Codex function reference. And this is where I spend a fair amount of my time because I look up almost every function call before I use it. And here's why. They all have this description of usage where it has the name of the function followed by all these things inside the braces, and you need to know which ones you need to include, how to include those, what they mean. So I'm just going to copy and paste this into, So I have a function, and this is what it's going to do. Now, anytime you look at the WordPress Codex and it has usage, this is what it means. It's like you got to throw that, you put this into your functions file somewhere. Now, I'm putting this, you could just have this stand all on its own inside your functions file, and that's okay, but it might not work the way you expect. It's much better to put the action that you want to do inside of another function, and we're going to give this a better name. We're going to call this, my theme underscore load styles. WordPress best practices are to use some sort of name. This is called namespacing. WordPress doesn't use proper PHP namespacing, for those of you who know what that means, but what we do is try to avoid creating functions that have the exact same name as any other function anyone might use anywhere inside of our WordPress plugins. Yes?
So you're loading styles here, but you also did an include in the styles.css.
So this is one way of doing it, all right, is with that. So if we were going to do an @ import, this is on our child theme directory, so we want to go up to the themes directory /2015 style.css, right? That would include it. And then we would put, our custom styles here. H1, But you can do that, but that's one option. We're going to look at another option because you can control. One reason to look at it this way is because this is the way that plugins will register style sheets that they are including. They'll do it exactly this way. They'll create a function, and then in a second, we're going to see how you actually load that into WordPress's processing queue. So once you get familiar with this way of doing it, you'll be able to look at the way that a theme has loaded their CSS and disable it if you don't want the crummy styling the plugin author has given the elements that their plugin creates. And I do that all the time because the companion to WP and Q style is WPDQ style. And I'm just going to go back to the Codex and go to DQ style. So it's really helpful to know that you can turn off the styles and even the JavaScript that some other author has forced on into your WordPress site that you might not want. All right, so we have the name of our function. It's something unique underscore something descriptive, load styles. The function name that WordPress uses for this is WP and Q style. The handle, we just create this. This is just something handy that helped us know what its name is. The source. So now we want a function. We want the source for. We want the HTML. Well, we want the URL. Sorry, we want the URL for our style sheet. And again, if we just open up Google and search for WordPress style sheet URL, we're going to get a function link to the function reference for get style sheet directory URI, which is exactly what we want. So I just copy that, go back in here. How many people have not programmed in PHP before? Okay. Have you programmed in JavaScript? No, a little bit in no. All right. So I'm not going to talk about functions and variables and all that. There are lots of great tutorials that will give you basics in doing that. Suffice to say, you can just stick that in here, and that gives you the complete URL. This will translate into http://wpcontent/theme/yours-theme/style.css. Style.css is a magic WordPress file. It just knows what that is because everyone who programs using themes does that. The one I used here was style sheet directory URI. There's also just style sheet URI, which gives you the whole thing, including style.css. Style sheet directory URI is your.com/wp-content/themes/your-theme, and that's it. And so we would add on to that, whatever the final path to your style is. Dependencies, version, media. If we look back at the Codex for WP and Q style, it has this, let's see, so usage, function name, everything that's inside the parentheses are called parameters or arguments. Those will be used interchangeably when you look at documentation for programming. So handle, source, DP, deps, dependencies. You'll see that these correspond, the descriptions correspond to the variables that they listed above. And you'll see that they're labeled optional or required, and the parameters, handle is required, the source is optional, sort of, and there are reasons it's optional, but the way we're using it, you have to have one. But we can see here dependencies, version, and media are all optional, so I'm just going to eliminate them. Now, the all-important how we actually, this is a function, we've declared our function, we've defined it. When something calls this, this will happen. Well, when do we WP and Q style? Where is that? I can tell you that what it's going to do is add it to the head inside of WordPress when it loads a page. So if we look at 2015 page, this is the page file, page.php. And again, where we got there is inside themes, 2015, page file. So we have the template hierarchy, identifies, oh, this is a page. We're going to load the generic page template. What it does, you'll see right at the top here, we have get header. This is called a template tag. Capital T, template tag. And that's just the terminology WordPress uses for functions that will output something on your page. They call them template tags, and it's kind of confusing because tags are used as other words for different things in other places in WordPress. Welcome to the world of WordPress, where you'll find that post gets used as blog post, but it's also what a page is. A page is a type of post. You'll find this very confusing and often irritating, and that's something you have to work around when you are customizing WordPress. So we have this get header template tag. It's just a function, and it outputs stuff. And if you can see, this file starts with PHP, and that's the first thing. And we have div primary. Well, this is content. Get header does indeed do what you think it would do, and it outputs your HTML, doc type, head, and even a lot of other stuff. So if we get header, what the get header template tag does is it runs header.php. And header.php is, here we have the doc type, the head element, all this other stuff. But you'll see there's kind of very little here before the body tag. And we have another template tag, WP head. Now, WP head is a template tag that does all sorts of stuff. And one of those things is to output CSS and JavaScript files. So we need to know what WP head, or I've got too many tabs open now. All right, so we have WP head. We need to know, you just sort of have to know that inside WP head is that would be a good example of something to go find out what the heck it does and search WordPress core. Actually, I'm not going to do that. WordPress WP head. So just like you take these things, pop them into Google. Hopefully, you'll find something that's fairly useful. Yeah, in the case of like what's in the Codex for WP head is not very much. For right now, we can say WP head will be something that you could find in this the WordPress track, make WordPress core, if you want to really find out what's inside of that. But one of the things that it does is it runs an action. Basically, there's a little bit of code inside of the file that defines WP head that says do action blah blah blah, and there's 100 of these things. One of those actions is WP print styles. So we have WP and Q style, and so what WP print styles does is it takes everything that's been enqueued using WP and Q style and actually prints it. Now, what we would want to do is do our enqueuing when WordPress head calls do action WP print styles. So we're going to add action. And again, you just have to start Googling this stuff and learning the proper. We're gonna actually I'm gonna Google add action so we can look at it in the Codex. So we need the name of the hook. Great. Hooks. What's, I happen to know that it's WP print styles. So you'll see that this is the action reference. So there's a functions reference, actions reference, and filters reference. And the difference between actions and filters is fairly subtle, but basically an action usually just does something or outputs something, and filters take something, do something to it, and give it back modified. If this were a 2-hour, again, adding filters is something that people usually spend an entire presentation doing, in addition to child themes or action hooks. So WP print styles is an action hook, so we can just copy it here. We're going to add an action to WP print styles, and the action that we want to do is the function we just created. So we paste in the name of that function there. So when WP, and then we're going to give it an order. We want our style sheet to load, everything loads by default at 10. We want ours to load maybe a little bit later, so we make it 11. Ours goes to 11. It's that kind of mentality. You could do something similar where you might have, you could use this to enqueue, rather than doing the import of the CSS file for your parent theme this way, you could do it by WP enqueuing you could do it by doing something similar to this, but you would do get template directory URI. So get template directory URI. There are hundreds of these helpful functions and template tags. Eventually, you will build up a knowledge base of what they all are. If we wanted to enqueue parent styles here, we just put in, we could enqueue the parent styles, and then we enqueue our styles to make sure that they load in this order. That's about, we started late, so I went a few minutes over, but we are out of time. Thank you very much. Are there any questions right now? Yes.
A question on the add action. You said they start at 10. What happens if you put the number of load times you want to?
Then you can, so the best example for that, all right, so are you familiar with shortcodes in WordPress? All right, well, a shortcode, you would not, what I'm about to type here, you would not put inside, let me get back here really quickly, thank you. It's gonna take too long to get over to a page and edit it. But inside WordPress, if you're editing, like typing your blog post, actually, this is something, now you could do, this is a shortcode, and something that's inside brackets like this. And it might be that some other plugin author has given you an assortment of shortcodes you can use, and it styles them in some snazzy way. But maybe you want to do something to that before handing it over to whatever they're going to do to it. You could add a filter or an action. Add action, add filter has a similar, you add those in the same way. You could say that your filter, you could give it a higher priority, like 9 or 8 or whatever, and it would do your thing before their thing.
And by doing it, then it means basically that's what
It depends. In the case, the priority is just like this list of stuff.
the order is off.
And right, so it'll do whatever's at 9, and then it will do whatever's at 10. So it will still process their thing. It'll just process it after your thing. And yeah, there are lots of reasons you might want to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.